Hey folks, we're dealing here with section 3.2, and this is the first section that we have on quadratics. We'll deal with quadratics a good bit over the course of the semester. I would like for you please to go down to where we are completing the square, and you might want to have this little list handy because I'm going to refer to it throughout the course of this video. So I'll go through it really quickly and then I'll use the steps in example number 2. So first of all, divide both sides by a. You'll notice that for example number 2, my a is actually just a negative. Number 2, move the constant down the line, ignore it temporarily. Number 3, take half of your b. Number 4, square that number. Number 5, add it and subtract it. 6, factor the trinomial. 7, add the leftover constants. And then lastly, 8, multiply your a back over. So let's look at example 2 and go through these steps one by one. So again, you might want to have that list handy while we go through it. So first of all, you got to get rid of your a. That negative out in front is not allowed. You cannot complete the square as long as your x squared is not standing alone. So you've got to get rid of that negative. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to divide on both sides by -1. Now on the left side, I'm just going to totally leave that alone. I'm not going to mess with it at all. Notice that your next step says that you should move the constant down the line. And so I'm factoring out my -1 here. I'm going to take each term and divide by -1. But as I do this, I'm also going to take that constant and move it down the line. You'll see what I mean here in just a moment. So notice your x squared divided by negative x squared divided by -1 is positive. Positive 3x divided by negative is negative. And I did not forget to divide this one as well. I just moved it down the line. All right, your step number 3 says that you should take half of the b term. Please remember that when I want to take half of 3, it's too difficult to think of that as 1.5. If I want to take half of 3, just say it's 3/2, 3 halves. And then the next step says I'm going to square that number. So you can see that underneath here. If I take 3 halves times itself, multiply the tops, you get 9. Multiply the bottoms, you get 4. Your next step in the list says that after you square that number, you're going to add it and subtract it. So I'm going to take my 9/4, I'm going to add 9/4, and I'm going to subtract 9/4. And I actually think that's in the next step here. The next step says that I should factor the trinomial. And so the trinomial, tri meaning 3, I'm only paying attention to these 3 pieces right here. So when I factor that trinomial, just those 3 pieces, and here I'm showing it with a bracket, but if I just take those 3 pieces, I've got a shortcut to be able to do that. So let's write it down first. Actually, I'm going to hide that back again. My first 3 pieces is going to be, sorry about that, is going to be a glob squared, just the trinomial. So keep your variable x, and remember that step where you had to take half of your b, that's what's going to go next. So that -3 halves, that's how this is going to factor. All right, so now let's uncover, make sure, I've run into that just a little bit. Let me clean that up a hair. Sorry about that. And we'll put that back in there. And so you can see then how that my trinomial has factored. And the next step tells you that you should combine your constants. I just got a common denominator for this. Your calculator will do that for you. But I was too lazy to use the calculator. So instead of a -10, I thought of that as 40 divided by 4, so that I could have a common denominator. So I'm combining my like terms here, and that's going to give me a -49/4. The very last step says take your a and give it back. So send it back over to the other side. And so when I take that a and send it back to the other side, and the first thing I'm going to do is send it to my glob. This guy gets the negative, and you can see it right here. And then this guy also gets the negative. And you can see a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. So that this is how you complete the square to get it into the standard parabola form.